Hello my lovely sewing friends, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel Serenity Sews. Thank you so much for taking the time and trouble to come back and listen to my ramblings. I do appreciate it hugely and I am trying to improve things all the time, so your feedback is fantastic. I know there's been some problems with the sound, but I'm hoping what I'm doing today will rectify that. So if you have just stumbled across me, it would really make a huge difference to me if you subscribed, and if you also, I believe, press the notifications, then you'll get to know when I've got a new video out there for you. So today I decided to start my A2Z of sewing skills and knowledge, and as you would expect, I'm starting with the letter A. So I'm hoping what to cover for you is one second, what is, if you like, my subject, which is A for Armscye or armhole, what that means, some examples of sleeves that fit into armholes, some of the problems you get with armholes, and this I know can cause definitely a lot of head scratching to make the garment fit you correctly. And finally, I will introduce to you a few solutions that you can put in place that will make a difference to your garment sewing. So first things first, Armscye. Where does the word come from? Well, it's an old word, and it's an old English word, believe it or not. Sorry, I'm just finding my place in my notes. And it means arm's eye. And it was first documented in English history in 1825. So it goes back a fair amount of time. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of our language and a lot of our narrative around sewing really hails back to not just olden days, but old techniques and old history into how garments were made in much simpler times, yet sometimes achieving some very complex garments. So the Armscye is the measurement of the opening front and back for the armhole. And what you will notice when looking at my drawing here, that there is a slightly different shape to the back than to the front. And that's incredibly important because the back, you need a little bit of additional room for that kind of movement. So having additional space there means that you can move with ease and also feel comfortable in the garment. And on my picture there, that shows you a very plain and simple, if you like, description of the armhole. What's important too is your shoulder line. Now, one of the things I know that causes problems, and we will be covering shoulders later on in my alphabet skills, that we take care to measure ourselves properly. And it is possible to measure your Armscye, but you have to do it in collaboration with your shoulder seam too, because your shoulder seam should fall centrally to your shoulder and come down towards the elbow in a straight line. And that's important to ensure that you're on the grain line and that you haven't got any twists or misshaping of the sleeve, but it also means it's more comfortable too. So those are quite important. Another thing to bear in mind is the type of garment that you're going to be making. So is it a this kind of sleeve or that kind of sleeve? And I'm going to show you some examples of that in a minute. Whilst we're talking about measuring, what's important for the armhole, it should in your measurements of your body correlate with your bicep measurement. So you know how sometimes you have to do some alterations to the sleeve width. It's really important that you measure every pattern or every garment that you think is going to be quite slim in the fit, that actually it correlates with the Armscye. Now, I'm one of those people who have to do bicep adjustments an awful lot, and I always judge the bicep measurement with the Armscye measurement. So that's just another idea to bear in mind when you're trying to get fitting exactly right. Next, I think, how are you going to set that sleeve into that armhole? There are so many different types of garments that recommend different ways to set the sleeve in, but fundamentally I think there are two ways. It's either a flat set in, or you set the sleeve into the garment when the side seams and the shoulder seam are sewn. And with that, what you're doing is you're putting in two opposites. You're actually can you see the shape there with the longer back measurement? You're actually putting in a concave to a convex. So if you think about that, you've got the two opposites of shape there. And it's really important when you're doing setting sleeves that you take your time and that you avoid those little gathers or little pulls that sometimes you only find once you finish and you're starting to press and finish off the garment. So having some good techniques about setting in is important. Now, I favour just taking my time and pinning it. However, when I was learning much more about construction, I used to do 2 rows of gathering from one notch to the other and just gently pull that so it shaped the sleeve for me, and then it went in and fitted beautifully. Okay, now there are so many examples of different sleeves, and I'm going to show you just a few so that you've got an idea about sleeves and the Armscye. Now, this is a jersey garment. You can see it's viscose jersey, no, it's not, it's bamboo, but it's very soft, very flowy. And if you're new to sewing, I would always say that actually putting a sleeve in a stretch garment is so much easier than doing a woven fabric sleeve inset. You can stretch slightly and you can pull your way to evening out the excess. And as you can see there, I'm sorry this isn't ironed at all, but the sleeve is set in beautifully. And I did this one as a flat sleeve insertion, which is one of the easiest ways to fit jersey into jersey. This is the Freya top, and I've put on it some deep cuffs, and I expect everyone out there will know the Freya. So I'm not going to tilly in the buttons stretch book. So if you're interested in that pattern, go and have a look. Now the next one I want to show you is a woven with a set-in sleeve. I'm really sorry, I tried to find this pattern earlier and I can't. So I know it's a new look one, and I know it's a very simple pattern. As you can see, it's got some top stitching detail on the shoulder line there. But this is a woven set-in sleeve, and I know that I set this in the traditional way. Okay, so although you can do a flat set-in sleeve with woven fabrics, sometimes I don't know, I just like to do the traditional methods, and for me doing it that way always feels right. But you have to do it the way that feels that it works for you. So that's a jersey set-in sleeve done in the flat way, and a woven sleeve done in the traditional set-in way. I now want to show you a pattern I've made up very recently, in fact earlier this week, which is a style art pattern with an interesting shoulder detail here. Can you see there going across? That's the front, and then it's joined on the shoulder seam there, look, again with this kind of bodice effect. It was really interesting, this, because what it does, it kind of cups the shoulders, but it's dropped shoulders too. So the effect is really interesting. And then if you can see here, the sleeve is still that kind of raglan-y shape. And I just thought this was a really different and interesting sleeve to try out. My pattern is called, sorry about that, the Lorna knit top, and that's the style art. Can you see that there? I think I used a knit fabric, so it is a traditional kind of lightweight cotton and linen, but this would make it lovely in a jersey, viscose jersey or something along those lines. So that's one worth looking at if you're interested in different style lines for shoulders and for sleeve setting. The next type of sleeve and armhole is one you've seen, I'm sure, many times before, is a batwing, as we call it, and it's called that exactly because that's what it looks like when the arms are outstretched. I'm not going to be able to get all of this in to show you, but the pattern I used, advise that you can use both woven and knit. So the knit element I used was around the neckline, the cuffs and the band at the bottom. I can probably show you that. See? This is some lightweight rayon and just some plain navy knit. And the pattern I use there is the Sewing Revival Rosetta top. And I'm going to try and do this one in some linen cotton for summer, because I think that's a really loose fitting, very comfortable, and actually made that in half an hour, believe it or not. So if you want a quick sew with some nice flowy style lines, then I would highly recommend the Rosella top for you. Okay. Now my next garment is a drop shoulder, and again this is a stretch pattern. I'm going to hold it up for you, and again you'll probably know this pattern. This is the Mandy boat neck tee pattern from Tessuti, and this is a free pattern, and it's one I've made more than a dozen times, I have to say. If you are quite narrow across here. Remember, you can alter the neckline because some people don't like that kind of wide boat neck, and I actually modified the pattern so that it fitted me correctly. But look here at what I mean about the sleeve. So it's a very boxy shape, and it has on it a shorter sleeve with a cuff on, and this one again is a quick sew. You do the whole thing flat and then you sew up the arm and the side seams together to give you that shaping. Nothing complicated about this pattern, but again, it's comfortable. You can do it in so many different types of knit fabric, and I do know that someone has done it in a woven fabric with the neckline and the cuffing in a knit. So that's an interesting one to try out. It doesn't say that you can do that on the pattern, but I don't see why not, and I think that's part of why I love sewing, because we're experimenting all the time. And the last example I want to give to you is there we go, you can see that is a raglan sleeve. Now this pattern, again, I'll hold it up for you, is another Sewing Revival pattern, as you can see there. And this is the Fantail Shirt and sweatshirt. I made mine in a silvery grey ponte. I wished I'd have mixed up again the fabrics on this, because this is another one she recommends you can do with a mixture of woven and knit. Raglan sleeves, I wish on that one that I'd done the round neck. I don't feel, normally I'm happy with a V-neck, but I don't feel that quite suits me the way I want it to. What I'm going to try and do is size down in this one. And that brings me to another point. Sorry, just have a little sip of my drink. It's tempting always when you're measuring to go for your bust, your waist, your hip. That's what we're told to do. But as our bodies change and as we get older, we develop perhaps a little bit more of a stoop in the back, which means we need extra room in the back. Then that distorts the front. So sometimes we can have what is called a hollow chest, which means basically that it dips in a little there. Also, because of the stoop, we become, if you like, shorter across our upper chest. And I have learned that taking my high bust measurement, looking on the pattern to see which is the nearest to me, and then grading out for the other measurements, such as the bust and the hip, gives you a lovely fit, and often much better, more comfortable, and has less drag lines. That was the word I was looking for. Now I want to just explain to you a little bit about what I'm talking about here. So it's my model. So sometimes you can see when you are trying on your garment that you may have some excess across here, just there. And if I show you this picture, that might give you a little bit of an idea what I'm talking about. Now this isn't a masterclass in fitting, but having some gaping or some looseness here means that you get distortion at the back, but also it looks a little bit unsightly at the front. So as I said before, taking that upper chest measurement and doing the pattern to that may just solve that problem. Another way to solve that problem is to take this excess and in your toile or in your paper pattern and move that into the dart which is along the bust line. Now there are loads of videos on that on YouTube, so I'm not going to go into that now, but that is a really quick way to get rid of this excess and the drag lines that you find there. Now you can have the same problem with the back. Now if I move that up and you see that we've got excess there, the same thing, you can get excess here or you can get excess further down. But if you've got excess that's leading out to the arm, what you can do is a shoulder dart, and inserting a shoulder dart, very narrow sometimes, gets rid of that and actually reshapes it to your measurements and to your comfort. So there's just a couple of ways of dealing with excess room in front and back armholes that are useful are shoulder pads, believe it or not. Now, of course, if you're making a jacket or you're making a coat, then shoulder pads are actually required to give it shaping, but also stability, and to identify, if you like, where the arm ends, because often with a jacket, it extends far beyond the measurement of the shoulder. So you need that because you'll have other garments on underneath, and shoulder padding gives you that ability. However, if it is that it just feels a little bit baggy there, then this is a really simple way of changing the shape slightly. Now, can you see that? By a very small shoulder pad actually lifts it up and defines the shoulder without any sewing. I mean, you can get these that they just stick in and they're removable, so you don't have to always stitch shoulder pads in. So that's one idea. I also make my shoulder pads. I'm making a trench coat at the moment, so I've got these ready. I might need to make them slightly deeper, but they're so easy. This is white felt, or you can use batting, and then in between you have this wadding that you build up and then stitch round to give it the shaping that you want. So don't dismiss shoulder pads as a solution for your sewing. The other useful thing is your tools and equipment. A sleeve roll is absolutely brilliant for getting in to define the edges and the rounds of where you want your sleeve to be shaped. So having a sleeve roll is, to me, one of the most vital tools that I own, and I use this every time I make a garment, usually at least once during that garment making. I also want to tell you about sleeveless garments, because what you'll notice on those is that the sleeve, or rather the edge of the armhole, is set in more compared to a garment with sleeves. And that's right, because you need to be able to move the arm all the way around, and you need to have space if you put a jacket or an outer garment on top of it. So just remember that if you're trying to convert a pattern from a sleeved garment to a sleeveless, you will need to make a more significant modification to that pattern. Right, so that's my sleeve roll. So useful, and I highly recommend, if you haven't got one, that you do get it, because you can do many other things on it too. Another useful thing that I've found over time is this little, it's actually a quilting iron, but I use it to get into all those tiny little creases that you sometimes get when you're trying to press and smooth them out. This does that job brilliantly. Have to say that's probably all I do use it for, but it was a Christmas present, and I happened to have quite a few little gathers that I thought would press out, so I wet it and I used this little iron. It's quite cute actually, look, and it did the job brilliantly. So again, you don't have to have it, but it's useful. So those are just my kind of additional tools that I think will help, and I can recommend to you. So just to recap, there are so many different sleeve types out there that thinking about the Armscye is important. And just a little bit of information I found out: Armscye actually means arm's eye. So it means where you see into where the arm is. I just thought that was fascinating. I hadn't heard of that before until I started doing some research to put this together. And I just thought, oh yeah, I can see that now. So it does make sense to me. One last pattern I think that demonstrates how versatile working with sleeves and armholes are is this one. I've made this several times. It's New Look 6217, and you have a kind of kimono, which is a traditional all-in-one sleeve built into the garment, and you wear it loosely, and usually it's a kind of lightweight fabric in the summer. And the top, which I have modified significantly, is a woven, very easy, just slightly boat necked, but definitely off the shoulder. Simple one that takes about 0.7 of a metre. So very economical if you've got any bits of fabric that you want to use up. Right, so recapping, as I said, make a toile if you're unsure, because it's always best if you're using a new pattern and you are looking at using some gorgeous fabric that you have tested it, made sure you're happy with the fit, and moving on, then you will have a lovely fitting garment. Consider the size of your arm to go through the armhole, because that does make a difference, and you might need to work on that if you have wider or slimmer arms. If you have some gaping on the front, think about going to the size that best fits your upper chest or your high bust measurement. That can often just solve all of the issues around fitting and gaping. And just enjoy doing what you do, because I have to say the greatest things I've learned are by making mistakes. I often rectify it, think about it, change the pattern, so next time I go to it I don't have to worry too much about the fit, unless of course my body shapes change, which can happen, but you know, in the main I know the patterns that do work for me. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll be back soon with a video on what I made. If you remember, in January I managed to get some fabrics, and I want to show you what I've made with those. But also I'll be doing a frugal garment video that is Rouen of the Yorkshire Sew Girl and Sam of Frugalissima, a challenge they're running for the month of March. So I'll go into that in more detail then. So until then, thank you so much. I do enjoy doing these, and I do enjoy trying to learn more myself, but also pass on that information to you. So please subscribe and please come back for more. And until then, goodbye and keep sewing.